Hey everybody, welcome to What's New in InstructLab. I will be your host today, Grant Shipley, and I am your friendly neighborhood InstructLab community member. And today I thought we'd get a few of us together and quickly go over some of the nice new features in the 0.21 release of the InstructLab command line tools. Now, obviously, these are not the only new features. We just picked 4 or 5 that we were all passionate about that we wanted to highlight and talk to you. So I'm joined by Legree, Taylor, and Frank today, and we're going to walk through some of these great things and how you can actually use them. And if you're not familiar with InstructLab, it is an open source project from Red Hat that is also community available for you to get involved in. And we are trying to make model fine-tuning accessible and easy for everyone out there. If you're not familiar with it, go over to github.com/instruct-lab. And you can download it and start playing around with it on your own machine. And we also have a community Slack channel. If you go to the InstructLab GitHub repo, you can join our Slack instance and join the different channels that may be of interest to you. Most of us hang out in the users channel. That's where we talk, ask ideas, ask for questions on how to do things. And so we look forward to seeing you in the community. All right, so let's get started. What's new, number 1? This is something I've been waiting for a long time. If you are a previous user of InstructLab, you know that we shipped by default a Merlinite-based model, but Red Hat and IBM are working together on a open source Apache 2.0 licensed family of models called Granite. And so with the 0.21 release, we're excited to announce that the default model is now the Granite 7 billion parameter lab model. So what's important about the Granite model is it is an Apache 2.0 license, and if you submit contributions to the upstream InstructLab taxonomy repo, those pull requests, those knowledge and skills additions that you add to the upstream repo will eventually get added into this Granite model. And so I'm pretty excited about that. In order to get started with the new Granite model, all you need to do is once you have iLab or InstructLab command line tools installed is just simply do a iLab download, and by default, it will download that Granite model. And then you can serve it and then chat with it and have a lot of fun. So I've been waiting a long time on that. Super excited about that. That's my number 1 feature. So let's go on and see a quick demo of this. It's an animated GIF. You can see all you do is iLab model download, and it will download the new Granite 7B Lab Q4 model. So it is a quantized model, and it is in the GGUF format. But once you have that, like I said, you can then serve it and chat with it. All right, so let's hand it over to Legree, and she's going to talk about one of her favorite new features, which is the max number of tokens. Legree?
All right, what's new, number 2? We've got max num tokens is now defaulting to 4,096. So let's understand what this means. Max num tokens is the value that gives you control over the amount of data that's produced during synthetic data generation. And you can customize it. Right now, like I said, it's going to be 4,096 as the default. But if you want to bring that down to a lower value, like 500, that will result in a faster data training and a reduced data set size. And that's super exciting for folks using consumer grade hardware because it's going to decrease the computational load and shorten the amount of training time you need, which is just incredible for those of us working on our laptops.
All right, so let's go on to number 3, Frank.
Yes, so very much along these lines, we now offer full training optimizations for RAM systems with as little as 16 gigs of RAM. Next slide, please. So what this means is that you can run the full training on more places. So the full training pipeline now fits on devices with 16 and 32 gigs of RAM. For Mac users, these optimizations are done automatically. For Linux users, you have to use the optimized memory option, and your results may vary depending on the CPU. But along with point number 2, this really drives down the compute requirements for fine-tuning your own models.
All right, so back to me. What's number 4? I submitted this request back in several months ago, and that is setting temperature. And it's getting hot in here. That is not Nelly. I'm probably showing my age, but Nelly is a one of my, that was a great song when I was younger. So I've been waiting on this temperature change for a long time in the default, when I say temperature change, in the iLab model chat interface is what we're talking about. So you may be wondering, what is temperature, right? So temperature is it's simply a parameter that you can pass in that dictates to the model or gives it suggestions on how much it should be creative in its answers, right? So a higher temperature value, and the values go from 0 to 1. So if you set it to 1, it'll result in being more creative and making some stuff up, essentially. And so if you want more deterministic results, you would set a lower temperature value, which will give you more consistent and a higher probability of predicting the next token that's going to be displayed. So I generally, for my personal use, I'm not giving you advice, I set it to about a 0.2 is what I use. Some people use 0.4 by default, though. You need to take this away from this what's new. In the config file, when you do iLab config init, by default, it sets it to 1.0. So it's kind of a higher temperature level by default. So if you're not getting the results you want from your chat, try setting that temperature to a lower value. And you simply do that with iLab model chat. You can pass in -t and a value, or you can do -- temperature and a value, and then ask it the question that you want. So I've been waiting on that a long time, super excited about it. All right, so let's go to feature number 5 that we want to highlight, and that is system profiles with Taylor.
Yeah, so arguably the most exciting feature of .21, we now have hardware system profiles. So if you've worked with InstructLab previously, in previous versions of InstructLab, we've had what we call train profiles. And these are just specific configurations for InstructLab training, depending on your hardware setup. And they help to optimize the training for the specific hardware that you have, tunes it specifically to your hardware. Now we have added support for various hardware system profiles. These system profiles are configurations for not just training, but the entire InstructLab workflow, each phase of the InstructLab tooling. These system profiles are tune InstructLab to your specific hardware setup to then optimize every phase, including synthetic data generation and every phase of the InstructLab tooling. This system profile that's automatically detected based on what hardware that you have then feeds into all of the settings and variables of your configuration file for iLab. And this is really all in the effort to maximize the automation of setting up your system and configuring everything to enhance the user experience so you don't need to tune the configurations yourself. But of course, if you want to tune the configurations, you still have that opportunity. But if you don't want to, or you simply don't know how, this makes the setup much more easier, makes it possible for the community to get things done more quickly without having to worry about the nitty-gritty details of their hardware tuning. And then I also have a little GIF that is slightly longer. But this happens during iLab config init. It detected that I have an M3 Max system profile. And then you can look at that system profile file as well in local share InstructLab internal system profiles. And then your specific profile is there, and you can look through the contents of that, and you'll see that it has sections for each phase of the InstructLab framework. And then that feeds, it's kind of like copy pasted some parts of that into the config.yaml file as well.
All right, so that is it for our top 5 features. Now, again, our top 5 features may or may not reflect what yours are. One thing I always want to call out on every InstructLab call is that InstructLab is an open source project that we want everyone to get involved with. However, I want to call out specifically, if you are using InstructLab on a laptop, like a M3 Max, like Taylor was just showing, you need to understand that the results you get on your laptop with model fine-tuning is not going to be as good as the results you get on, say, a server with 8 NVIDIA H100 cards in it, right? That's just the reality of the world today. But it is fantastic that you can run this stuff on your laptop. But I always think about it as kind of like the inner loop of software development, where I'm quickly iterating, testing things out, but I don't do production builds of my application code on my laptop. We have a build system to do that. Much like if you're doing models for production, you would want to have a production ready box with InstructLab on it with the required hardware and push your taxonomy and build it there. All right, that's it for 0.21. We'll be back when a new version comes out, hopefully pretty soon. Thanks everyone for joining, and like and subscribe, and keep following the InstructLab YouTube channel for more great videos like this. Thanks.